let's move over to the SEC East. How does Steve Spurrier's Gamecocks look?
Well, they look another good team. I mean, 11-2 last year, 7-6 against the spread. Returned 8 offense, 6 defense. He's got this program going in the right direction, and there's no let up here. They've had 3 straight 11-2 seasons. Senior quarterback Dylan Thompson will lead the team now that Connor Shaw has graduated. Last year, Thompson had 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 783 yards passing, and a 58% completion rate in limited action. Running back Mike Davis is back, 5.8 yards per carry for him last year. 4 offensive linemen are returned. They lose Bruce Ellington, a wide receiver, but junior Shaq Rowland and senior Demir Bird will step up. They return explosive offense, but there are concerns on defense. So they lose 3 of their top defensive linemen, including, of course, Devian Clowney, the #1 draft pick, and the linebacker leading tackler is back, plus you have 2 starters returning in the secondary. So they should win the SEC East this year. They open at home versus Texas A&M. Then they get East Carolina and then Georgia also at home. Their toughest opponents are on the road, though. That's going to be the biggest problem. Auburn, Florida, and Clemson. And also they have a big question mark on the defensive line. So with the defensive line question mark and the fact that they have such a tough road schedule, they'll win I think they'll win the SEC East, but they could go down, maybe have a 9-3 and 10-2 season, John.
Well, I'm looking at the Georgia Bulldogs is also having a very good season, probably better than last year. 8-5 record last year, but 3-9-1 against the spread. Mark Richt's team was a money burner, 8-5 over the total. It's a lot of good news, though, with the Bulldogs for 2014. You get 5 starters back on offense, 10 on defense. The offense was very good, averaging 36.7 points per game. That was 22nd in the country. 314 yards passing was 15th. And quarterback Aaron Murray, he's gone, but remember he had an injury last year. And because of that, the senior quarterback Hudson Mason got some time, and he's back. And he was pretty good. 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 968 yards, 61% completions. He's working behind an offensive line that only allowed 22 sacks and is very good running back in the backfield. Todd Gurley, he's a junior, and this kid's been terrific, averaging 1,000 yards rushing the last 2 years. And in those 2 years, he's averaged 6.1 yards per carry. He was a terrific talent. A lot of good wide receivers. You got senior wide receivers Chris Conley and Mike Bennett back. They got over 500 yards each time. But a guy to watch would be Malcolm Mitchell. He's going to be a junior. Didn't see him last year almost at all because he got injured in the first game, hurting his ACL. But he's back. Back in 2012, he was a force with 572 yards receiving. So really, this team is loaded on offense. It'll be a very balanced team for Mark Richt. Now, the defense slipped badly last year. That was a big reason for them being a money burner. They gave up 29 points per game, and that was a little bit expected as they were rebuilding. But there are some new looks. 10 starters are back. That's good. But they bring in a new defensive coordinator in Jeremy Pruitt. He was at Florida State, a top coordinator. And he also was an assistant in years past at Alabama, so he does know the SEC. And they used to run a 3-4 approach, but Pruitt's going to be bringing in multiple looks, which should help the transition, and it should create more turnovers. They only had 15 takeaways last year, and this defense should be better because it's one of the best linebacking core in the SEC. They got Ray-Mac Wilson, a senior linebacker, and Amaro Herrera. Schedule, well, they got some tough road trips to South Carolina. That'll be week 2, September 13th, and later against Missouri. That's going to be tough. And the revenge game is going to be right there in the opener, August 30th. They were favored 2.5 against Clemson last year. Lost the game in a wild shootout, 38-35. They should have a chip on their shoulder for that game. And keep in mind that Mark Richt has been very good on the road, 48-20 straight up, 35-32 against the spread. And even the last 3 seasons, they're 10-5 straight up on the road, 6-8 ATS. This team is certainly capable of winning the East Division. All right, Jeff, how about the Florida Gators? I mean, they're off an uncharacteristic disaster. Is the heat on Will Muschamp at all?
Oh, yes, it is. Last year, 4-8 straight up. 4-8 against the spread, 8-4 under the total. They returned 4 in offense, 9 in defense. Of course, last year the offense was terrible. Not only was it bad, it was boring too. It was just they averaged 14.4 points per game. And when you compare something like that to Auburn, it's like going back to the dark ages or something. They had to do something. So what they did, you got a new offensive coordinator, Kurt Roper, comes over from Duke. He's gonna introduce an up-tempo offense, probably a lot of no huddle. So that's going to be hopefully a big improvement for the fans. So it'll be easier to watch his team this year. Last 2 years, the passing game ranked 118th and 114th in the country. And not only was and the quarterback Tyler Murphy transferred to Boston College, so the new quarterback now is Jeff Driscoll. And he broke his leg last September, but he's all right now. They also recruited Will Greer, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and they also have Skylar Morningweg, who started the last 3 games last year at quarterback. Kelvin Taylor and Mac Brown return at running back. Defense will be one of the best in the country, and hopefully we'll get some relief from the offense scoring more points this year. 9 returning starters in defense. The leading tacklers are back, including middle linebacker Antonio Morrison and defensive end Dante Fowler Jr. It's an embarrassing non-conference schedule, though, that for a school of Florida stature. They open with 3 home games versus Idaho and Eastern Michigan, and then a conference game versus Kentucky. Late in the season, they have a home game against Eastern Kentucky. In the conference, they have LSU, Missouri, and South Carolina at home, Alabama, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Florida State on the road. Luckily, they have a soft schedule to start the season to give them time to get that new offense going. But still, it's going to take them more than a year to turn this around. They might pull out a 7-5 season there, John.
Well, I'm going to take a look at the Missouri Tigers, and I think they're going to take a step back this year. Gary Pinkel's team was sensational last year, 12-2 straight up, 11-3 against the spread. But this is a rebuilding season. Only 4 starters back on offense, 5 on defense. I remember just 2 years ago they were 5-7, so they're in transition. The offense should be the strength of the team. They were sensational last year. 39 points per game, was 14th in the country. They averaged over 230 yards rushing and passing. In fact, they were 16th in the country in rushing with 237.9 yards per game. They have a sophomore quarterback, Matt Mock, back. 11 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, just over 1,000 yards. And he got pressed into service when James Franklin got hurt. He only had 4 starts, so he played almost half the season. And he's a very good rushing quarterback, 229 yards rushing. So he gained some experience last year, which is key. And he's got some very good skill position guys around him. Good running backs with 5'9" junior Russell Hansborough. He averaged 6 yards per carry, 685 yards. They also have senior Marcus Murphy back, 6.5 yards per carry. They do lose 2 of the top 3 wide receivers, but there's actually tremendous depth here, led by senior wide receiver Bud Sasser, 361 yards. Marcus Murray is a senior, and wide receiver Levi Copeland is a sophomore. They saw a little time last year. The defense was great at getting after the quarterback. They led the SEC with 41 sacks. That's not going to happen again, though. The defense allowed 23 points per game. That was 34th in the country. They lose their best pass rushers. They only have 5 starters back. Strength is going to be with junior linebacker Kentrell Brothers. He has 70 tackles. He is back. But they're not going to be able to get after the quarterback. And even with that great pass rush last year, the Missouri secondary was torched. They were ranked 98th nationally. They have to replace 2 new cornerbacks. Safety is actually the strength with Braylon Webb. He's been there a while. But still, this is a team that's got some weakness in the secondary and a lot of new guys up front. Can't see their defense being as good. They're going to have a revenge game against Georgia, but it's Georgia that will be in revenge mode. That'll be October 11th because Georgia had a 15-game home winning streak, and Missouri went in there and beat them last year. And there's also some tough road games for the Tigers at Florida, at South Carolina, at A&M, and at Tennessee. Keep in mind, Missouri at home has been very good, 56-22 straight up, 35-33-2 against the spread over 78 home games, but still, with the tough road games and the new-look defense, I can't imagine this team hitting 12 wins again. I think 8 or 9 wins probably should be the goal. All right, Jeff, Vanderbilt, they're off a terrific season, but they're a brand-new coaching staff.
Yeah, Derek Mason takes over. He was a defensive coordinator at Stanford the last 3 years, and Vandy lost 5 top recruits when James Franklin left for Penn State, but they still should have a decent team. 9-4 last year, 7-6 against the spread. They returned 6 on offense, 7 on defense. 4 starters returning to the offensive line. The quarterbacks, sophomores Patton Robinette and Johnny McCurry were battling it out. McCurry actually had the better spring game. And in that game, redshirt freshman running back Ralph Webb had 114 yards and 14 carries, including a 60-yard touchdown run. They also have Jaron Seymour and Brian Kimbrough, so they're in great shape there at running back. They lost their top receiver, Jordan Matthews, so Jordan Cunningham and Chris Quintero have to step up there. Defensively, the front 7 looks good, including senior Kyle Westman and junior linebacker Darian Herring, who had 84 tackles last season. They have to replace almost the entire secondary, though. The schedule, they open with 4 home games, Temple, Ole Miss, UMass, and South Carolina. And they also have an FCS opponent down the road, Charleston Southern, plus they play Old Dominion. On conference, Georgia, Missouri, Mississippi State on the road. Florida, Tennessee at home. They have a very easy non-conference schedule here, so they should have no trouble getting to 8 wins this year, John.
All right, the rebuilding Kentucky Wildcats, boy, they're off a train wreck season, and the numbers across the board are pretty dismal. Last year, Kentucky was 2-10 straight up, 4-8 against the spread. They were 0-8 in the SEC. And Mark Stoops begins his second year, and their only 2 wins last season were against Miami and Alabama. Well, not the 2 schools you're thinking of. They beat Miami of Ohio and Alabama State, so they went 0-8 in the SEC. And they begin the second year under former Texas Tech offensive coordinator Neil Brown. You know what those Texas Tech teams were like, up-tempo, no huddle. He wants to do that again. And he's got a junior quarterback in 6'4" Maxwell Smith returning. It wasn't bad. 9 touchdowns, only 1 pick, over 1,200 yards, just 53% completions before he got injured. However, they only averaged 20.5 points per game. They were 98th in the country in passing, 85th in rushing, all kinds of trouble. One of the pluses would be sophomore running back JoJo Kemp. This offense likes to have running backs who can run in, catch passes out of the backfield. This guy was actually pretty good, 4.8 yards per rush, and he had 9 catches for 56 yards. So he is an asset. But overall, the wide receiver corps just has senior Jevez Blue at 586 yards, a lot of depth at the skill position, or I should say a lot of weakness at the skill position. So it's probably not going to be much better of an offense. And then the defense, boy, speaking of offensive problems, the defense was worse. 90th in the country in points allowed, over 31 points per game. They lose their best run stuffer in Avery Wilson. He was also a clubhouse leader. 6 starters overall returned. And the secondary for Kentucky had only 1 interception the entire season. So there is some guys back, but boy, they weren't very effective. Sophomore safety Blake McClain, he had to play the entire season out of position. He was kind of a safety acting as a strong side linebacker. But one plus for the secondary is maybe help is on the way in JUCO transfer A.J. Stamps. He was a national champion and an All-American last year as a physical shutdown corner. Got to believe he's going to be thrown in there to help with this weak secondary. But overall, you know, this team actually could start 2-0. But after that, they get Florida, Vanderbilt, South Carolina. And then you look at the road games, boy, it's just killer. At Florida, at LSU, at Missouri, at Tennessee, at Louisville. This team was good to look at under the total last year with that bad offense, 7-5 under. And I can see that trend continuing as a team to go look at under the total. All right, another team that is rebuilding would be the Tennessee Vols. They continue to do that under Butch Jones, Jeff.
Yeah, last year, 5-7 against the spread. It was the 3rd year in a row they've been 5-7. This year they returned 5 on offense, 5 on defense. The program has been stuck in neutral here for the last several years. It's been a terrible thing to bet on. 13-21 against the spread the last 3 seasons. Butch Jones, though, had a great recruiting year, 7th in the country, but it's going to be an extremely young team, plus the Vols losing their entire offensive line. Also, the quarterback situation is up in the air. Right now, it looks like it's sophomore Josh Dobbs. He's in the lead based on the spring game. Junior Justin Worley is the incumbent, but last year he threw for 10 TDs with 8 interceptions. The big recruit is wide receiver Josh Malone, who had 6 catches for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns in the spring scrimmage. Another talented wide receiver is sophomore Marquez North. Jalen Hurd and Marlon Lane would be the running backs. Defense also is very young with only 5 starters. The top 2 players are senior middle linebacker A.J. Johnson and junior safety Brian Randolph. Butch Jones is going to be, I think he'll be successful there, but it's going to be a couple of years before these players can get some experience. And this year, they'll probably have a 4 straight 5-7 seasons. It's a tough schedule. They open at home versus Utah State and Arkansas State, on the road versus Oklahoma, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Their home games against Florida, Alabama, and Missouri. With a young team like this, it's going to be brutal. I don't think they'll miss out on a bowl game this year, and next year they'll probably be much better. But I'll look for another 5-7 season for Tennessee, Jim.
Well, I'll finish up with the Arkansas Razorbacks, and I don't think they're going to make a bowl game either. They are rebuilding under Brett Bielema. They're off a season 3-9 straight up, 4-8 against the spread. They didn't win a game in the SEC. There's some talent returning, 7 on offense, 6 on defense. And, you know, Bielema's teams at Wisconsin were great at rushing the football. He's already taken care of that, as Arkansas was 21st in the nation with 208.7 yards rushing per game. He's got a senior quarterback in Brandon Allen back, 13 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but just 49% completions, and he's been dealing with a shoulder injury. So for Arkansas, you have to take a look at the backups. Because of that, they got a couple, and the biggest one would be a freshman quarterback, Rafe Peavy. He's a dual-threat pro-style quarterback, and they also have redshirt freshmen Austin Allen and Damon Mitchell. This team, though, does need playmakers at wide receiver. Top 3 the top 3 wide receivers returning combined for just 34 catches. So this is going to be a run-first team again, and the backfield is going to lead the way. And the key is sophomore running back Alex Collins. He had over 1,000 yards rushing, was the SEC Freshman of the Year, 5.4 yards per carry. They also have sophomore running back Jonathan Williams. He had 900 yards rushing, 6 yards per carry. So this is going to be a great Arkansas ground game, but they just really don't have any balance on offense. And the defense was just awful, 30.8 points per game allowed. It was 89th in the country. So you got some changes. Bielema brings in defensive coordinator Robb Smith. It's the guy who was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. The two know each other because they worked together at Iowa back in the 90s. And what Bielema wants to do is he wants to simplify the defense, and he wants to have guys attacking the football. So a guy like Trey Flowers, a senior linebacker, going to be asking all the defensive players, wherever the ball goes, you rush to that spot. Could lead them to breakdowns in the secondary, and that's been a problem because they ranked 104th nationally in pass efficiency defense and 102nd in each of the last 2 years. The schedule doesn't look too good. First of all, they have home games, a lot of home games, and only 4 road games, which is a plus. But boy, the opener is going to be at Auburn August 30th, and then some very tough road games at Texas Tech, at Mississippi State, in Missouri. So outside of the home games, it's going to be a very difficult season. I think 500 probably should be the goal for Arkansas, maybe squeezing out 6 wins for a bowl, but probably not. It's going to take a couple of years to rebuild this program. All right, make sure you check out JimFeist.com for top plays from the nation's top handicappers like Jeff Sod and Mr. Vegas. Make sure you also look for ProLine college and NFL football previews on the website at JimFeist.com. I'm John Creighton in Las Vegas. Good luck with the games, and we'll see you next week with another edition of Pro.